We're back, and we're back at home. Came back a little early, mainly just for you guys, and my wife also. I'm glad to be home. I've been traveling a lot the last 4 weeks. Been home a total of like I don't know 4 or 5 days in the last month. So glad to be back at the Casa. Flew back in a little bit early. My team still out there in Bermuda, working with the regulators, working with the attorneys, making stuff happen. So shout out to Carl, MaxCon, and Lewis, who is our CIO, for making it happen and allowing me to get back to work instead of so much conference. So flew back a little bit earlier. We are here with good internet for you guys so that the YouTube is not a problem tonight like it was at the hotel on Monday. So hopefully, you get to listen to the whole thing and you get the update on the macro and everything, if that's what you're here for. So on that topic, starting to see things move again. Brett's opening up in the stock market, looking like a blow off top, or the same signs as the blow off top in the stock market here. I don't know that we've reached it yet. I don't know where the maximum is going to be. I do think we're going to see a rotation out of the FANG stocks. And the large blue chip, stocks that most everybody's talking about, Nvidia and the like, into mid and small caps, before we are, all done with this deal. I do think that we are close to that point happening. Looking at some of the other indicators that we always watch, we've got the JPY. The 10-year is at 2.6, the highest that it's ever been in the entire past decade, really since about really the late 90s. We haven't seen anything this high on the chart. Last time we were at this price point, not price point, but yield for the 10-year was back in the mid 90s for Japan, long time ago. So pretty substantial rise in their interest rates. Those are continuing to climb. People anticipating that they are going to have to raise interest rates. There is a large disparity between where they're holding their interest rates and where their interest rates are trading for the bonds. Many of the people at the BOJ and people that are retired from the Bank of Japan, all coming out and saying that they expect that their interest rates will be at 2% or higher in the next 2 to 3 years. I think we really should see like 1.5 at some point here in 2026. I think that they will be moving aggressively higher when they do decide to go ahead and shift here. They have one more intervention. If you want to go look at the yen versus the USD, you can see the last 5 interventions they've had here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, yeah, that one, I don't know that this one was an intervention about 24 hours ago or not. It wasn't anywhere near as significant as some of the other ones. But they only get so many more before the IMF is going to step in here and start regulating them much more strictly in order to be able to prevent a currency collapse from happening. And again, I do think that they're going to be forced to raise interest rates and invoke monetary policy potentially at some point here in May. Again, that would be unprecedented. They have never had an emergency meeting to be able to invoke monetary policy in Japan. However, they did state that they are going to come out and kind of do ad hoc meetings as necessary as the situation continues to unfold. So hanging out around 158, back up off the bottom where they pushed it back down to around 155. Again, the danger zone, is around 160, 161, 162. If we see the yen depreciate against the dollar substantially in a short period of time, that's when they're going to have to act again. So at some point, that is going to unfold. I think that they are waiting till we have guidance from the OCC around stablecoins. A lot of people very optimistic on the markup for the Clarity Act tomorrow. I'm not so optimistic. I've had multiple conversations while traveling at these conferences over the last 2-3 weeks. People that are in the know, the people that are writing the bill, don't seem overly optimistic that this is going to get through. You got the PACE Act, you got the SAVE Act, you got midterms. There's just a lot, right? So they're going to vote on the markup tomorrow. to be able to put it to a vote in the Senate or the House. Not sure which one it's going to pass through first. But I don't know. You know, if it has any chance of getting through at some point this year, they have to get this markup passed tomorrow. If it passes tomorrow, it's, you know, I'm at 5% that we get it this year. I'm pretty like 95% that it's not going to make it through. But there's a chance, right? I'm not as certain on this as I've been on other things in the past. I'm still wrong on those. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. I'm just one guy. It's just conversations that this person says, bro, it already passed. It did not pass. It passed the Genius Act, not the Clarity Act, though. So that's on the docket for tomorrow for vote for the markup. We'll see how it does. Irrespective of that, you know, I think XRP is well positioned. Looks like, you know, there's, again, a lot of people coming out saying that they have some type of bill that they're going to put forward. Yeah, I'm 95% sure that it will not pass. That doesn't mean it doesn't get past the markup tomorrow. Okay, like they could vote it and it could get past the markup. They still have to vote on it in both the Senate and the House, and then it would have to go to President Trump to sign into law. With everything else that's going on this year in midterms, highly unlikely that we will see the Clarity Act passed at this point here in 2026. So I think, you know, 2027, yeah, I'm bullish on that. But here for the rest of 2026, 95% that we don't see it happen. So there's a lot of people that are enthusiastic about it, and I love that. We do need regulation for the space, but I think, you know, oversight from the OCC and you know, guidance from the CFTC and the SEC, I think that's enough to be able to get things across the line and get things moving for tokenization of the stock market and all the other stuff that you guys are wanting and waiting for. One other indicator that I'm still hanging out watching is oil. We saw oil climb and then come back down for crude and Brent here domestically in the US. Still hanging out about 16,000 yen per barrel. It's pretty substantial. It's like the highest cost of energy that they've ever had there in Japan for the past couple decades, at least on the full scale that I can see. So not good. They are definitely experiencing inflation in their economy. And they're going to have to be able to combat that either by selling off treasuries or doing something else to prop up the yen or increase its value against the dollar or raise interest rates, which they do not want to do because it will unwind the reverse carry trade. And again, like I've said before, I'm pretty confident that they're waiting on the OCC to come out with their guidance around stablecoins. Could this be that scenario that I kind of thought was going to play out before, where they were backed into a corner and they push it without, you know, kind of because they have to, problem, reaction, solution? It's possible. You know, they've got the comments back. Like the OCC could probably act quickly if they needed to be able to push that through and allow the banks to be able to issue stable coins. I don't think the banks are going to give up the yield. And I get why people are frustrated by that. You're not going to be holding stable coins for the majority of your wealth anyway. I think you're going to be dealing with tokenized deposits. The stable coin yield is to drive demand for banks for them to want to hold U.S. treasuries so that we can stabilize the bond market when all these treasuries come flooding back to the U.S. We need that. We need to incentivize them to do that. Otherwise, we are in a bad spot, like I've said before. So that's where things are. Still waiting on, you know, things to play out. You know, market's still trending sideways in crypto. We really haven't seen the expansion of breadth across digital assets. But I think as we see a rotation out of the large cap stocks, some of that liquidity will make its way into crypto. And again, you know, depending on who shows up with an ETF and when, we could see other stuff. We're also looking at vault infrastructure. There's a lot of things that are there were conversations there in Bermuda around insurance and banking and how this is going to be structured and what it's going to look like to be able to run DeFi out of institutional ecosystems. A lot of good information there, a lot of really good panels. Shout out to Salt and Scaramucci for having us there, and we'll see you guys at Jackson Hole this year in Wyoming in August as well. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions. Again, appreciate you taking time out of your Monday. Well, not Monday, Wednesday, your Wednesday night, coming to hang out with me and ask great questions. Always forget to say it, but if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm and the channel. We are almost to 200,000 subscribers over there on YouTube. So if you're watching this, watching back later, or watching on a different channel and you're not subscribed, I would really appreciate it. That's one of the goals for us this year. So please, if you can, just click a subscribe, even if you don't watch me on that platform very often, it would be very much appreciated. All right, Weird Kids TV. They say, Jake, thanks for all that you do. What's next for the reverse carry trade? Are we good on the OCC situation? And what happened to Evernorth? I saw a video with Paul Barron, podcast guy, said XRP was being suppressed, PA, in July. Lots of questions in that one. So we went over the reverse carry trade just before I answered this. So same thing on the OCC. They got the comments back. I do think they're going to be rolling that out shortly. Evernorth still, filing amendments to their S4. They've been back and forth with the SEC a couple times at this point. They did, send them some red lines and revisions. It's not like an ETF where it's just, you meet these standards and you're able to go. So there's some back and forth, and I do think that they're going to be able to roll out Evernorth here in the next 30 to 45 days. I do think that they'll be able to finalize that SPAC, and I think there may be some additional announcements alongside that, which is going to be pretty cool. And then, as far as XRP being suppressed, Ripple sells XRP onto the market. Like, I'm bullish. Like, I understand why they do it the way that they do it. It funds Ripple. I don't make any bones about that. There's a lot of other people that poo-poo on that or don't understand the dynamic there. But yeah, there's definitely price manipulation in the market. And this is a nascent market. It's less than $3 trillion in total market cap. It only takes a couple $2 billion to manipulate any one of these digital assets, Bitcoin included. So, and I know that sounds like a lot of money to one individual, but these institutions have billions and billions and billions of dollars to be able to participate in these ecosystems and deploy and do what they need to in order to be able to make money, because that's what they're, trying to do. So if they wanted to buy through the dark pools and the OTC desk and not move the market, and they wanted to sell a portion of that back onto the market through the exchanges to continue to push price down and hold it low, that's a great way to continue to dollar cost average down and get low pricing across the market for an extended period of time if you're recycling some of that XRP that you're buying off the OTC desk in the dark pools. That's just my thesis on why it's being manipulated and how it's being held down. Somebody else, I'm sure, could look at capital flows and validate that. I think we need price appreciation before they're going to tokenize the stock market. So if that's going to happen in Q3, then we would need some price appreciation before then for back-end settlement, because otherwise there's not enough liquidity. And yeah, you mentioned July. I think that we're going to get tokenization of the stock market in Q3. At least that seems to be the intent for both NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, and the other exchanges as well. Texas Stock Exchange is also going to be launching in Q3. From my understanding, when we spoke with them in the not too distant past, that's not going to launch tokenized, but they do intend to tokenize the ETFs that they're going to be launching there. First, it's just going to be ETFs, and then maybe toward the very end of the year, early 27, they'll be rolling out like specific stocks on that stock exchange. So they're about 5 blocks from our office here in Dallas, which is pretty cool. But all that being said, again, I think we need a high, stable price for XRP to be able to facilitate the back-end settlement of the stock market before they tokenize the exchanges themselves. All right, Colin, Mr. Cooper, he says, hey, Jake, is it that governments around the world have conspired for this scenario, war, reverse carry trade, XRP increase, effectively playing God? I don't think they're playing God. It's not like they can decide who's born. Like, you can, at a high level, do some of that stuff. But look, how do I explain this in a way? If you had visibility of all this data and you could prevent World War III, you could prevent famines, you could prevent horrible things and a lot of collateral damage during certain events taking place. You would do whatever was in your effort or ability to do that, right? And I think, the people that are at the highest level have actuaries and quants and very, very intelligent people alongside AI and other systems at this point in order to be able to play out these different sequences of events to see where they transpire and lead to. And if you could show that to other countries and say, hey, look, we don't like each other. That's cool. We need each other for, the global economy is galvanized at this point. Everybody's dependent on one another. Everybody's holding everybody else's debt. If one of us goes down, we're all going down. That was very apparent in 2008. It was a global deal that happened with the GFC. So, we got to work together. We don't have to like each other, but we got to work together on this stuff. These are the scenarios. These are the war games. These are all the paths that we could go down. Here's all the collateral damage that could happen to everybody around the world, whether it's your people, my people, those people, other people. It doesn't matter. There's going to be a lot of lives lost and a lot of, potential value that could have been created, just lost to the world. How about, we run these war games and we kind of, tit for tat. We jockey for power and in the global forum where everybody can kind of see what's going on. And I give some and you give some and we jockey back and forth. But eventually, we stack things in a way where everybody's got an excuse for how this plays out, but we come out fairly unscathed in comparison to what it would have looked like if we had not been proactive and had these conversations. So I don't think they're playing God, but this is kind of the reason I want to be in a position where I have this data. I want visibility into that. I want to see, like, are these people actually doing things actively because they are in the best interest of society as a whole? Or is it their own best interest that they're incentivized? And maybe it's some of both, right? Like, I don't know that you can ever get away from human nature. Most people look at the world through a lens of how does it benefit me? And then maybe somebody else can have some. I don't like doing it that way. I like to position it where other people win and their win is my win. And I think there are people like that. I think there are good people in the world that operate that way. And even at a high level, there was many people that died on the Titanic that were against the Federal Reserve, Jacob Astor and a few other families. And had they been around, I don't think the Federal Reserve would have been formed. I don't think we would have gone down this path. I think Tesla's technology probably would have prevailed, and there'd be we'd be in a very different place. And I think we're circling back around on that. And those type of people are back at the table now, trying to navigate away from, the paradigm that we've lived in for the last 100 years. But I digress. I don't think that they're attempting to play God. I think that they are working things out in a way where we don't end up in Armageddon or World War III or a situation where there's a ton of collateral damage and loss of life. But there still needs to be some type of hierarchy in how this plays out. Link versus XRP competitors, Link prediction for 2030. They're not competitors at all. They're actually mutually beneficial. So Link does a couple things. I mean, they have CCIP, which is cross-chain interoperability protocol. They're an oracle. They're an enterprise oracle. That's where it has the largest amount of traction. Link was actually the first thing I ever invested in because I was like, that makes sense. You have to be able to transport real-world data on-chain for these smart contracts to ever, work the way that they're intended to in order to be able to scale and gain the efficiencies that they promise. I bought Link at, I think, $3.30, 40 cents, somewhere in there. It's the first time I bought it. And then it ran up to $8 and I sold it all. Should have held on longer. But it's an enterprise oracle. The XRPL has oracles that can be integrated into it. As we build out liquidity pools and the AMMs and the multi-purpose token and all the functionality that's going to be used on the XRPL, Flare included. Flare also has the time series oracle that they've developed as a price oracle. You need oracles on the XRPL. Every smart contract is going to need an oracle. And Link absolutely has the largest presence for enterprise or the private space on oracles. I think IOTA is probably going to be king in the public sphere for oracles. Again, just my 2 cents. I don't really view them as competitors. I view them as, like I said, mutually beneficial. Chainlink, yes. And then prediction for price in 2030. I mean, there's definitely going to be more demand for the token and the use of the network in enterprise applications and smart contracts. I don't know. I could see a 3-digit link. That's quite feasible. What is Chainlink's price right now? Anyway, it's probably around $20. Link crypto price. Actually $10 for a $10 link. Highest price it's ever been was 48. Golly. Yeah, missed out on that. I should have held. From $3 to 48 would have been a heck of a deal. I probably wouldn't have sold it though, Then we've been back down and we just kind of been bobbling along since then. Been back up close to 30 a couple times and just not quite cracking it. So yeah, I think Link could easily be a 10x from here, especially as smart contracts scale and enterprise applications scale on chain. I don't see why it couldn't be a 3-digit token. But it doesn't transfer value. The demand for the token's not going to be the same as it would be for something that's being locked up as collateral. There's just a very different dynamic for how XRP operates in comparison to Link and the token there. Joseph Evoy? Butchered that. I know I did. And I apologize. If I have a treasury-backed stablecoin like RLUSD and I keep mine in cold storage, can I collect the yield? No. It doesn't matter who holds it. It matters who issues it. Ripple is the issuer of the RLUSD. So when you buy it, you're either buying it on an exchange who paid Ripple already, and they took that money and bought treasuries with it to be able to back the stablecoin, and they're holding the treasury that backs it, audited, foolproof. You could look and make sure that there's a one-to-one backing, or you're buying it from Ripple and you give them the money and they do the same thing, right? So the token itself is never going to have a pass-through value of yield, but if you're going to use a stable coin, counterparty risk is a thing. If you trust Ripple, that they have an audited balance sheet and they're very transparent and they show that it's a one-to-one backing, then you don't have the possibility that it's going to become unstable or unpegged and have an issue. If there's a big run, people will be able to redeem, they'll be able to sell the treasuries and give them dollars. So that's the benefit of working with the trusted counterparty. It's not for the yield. And that's why a lot of people, I think, will use RLUSD on their balance sheet. They'll be able to sweep it into money markets and other products that Ripple creates or partners to be able to create, like they're doing with VanEck. So that would be the way that you could earn yield on your RLUSD, would be hold it in institutional custody and participate in a money market product or something else that utilizes RLUSD in it to be able to generate the returns on top of it. Willie, Mr. Plank, he says, God bless you, sir. If we have a bank account with DWP and Uphold, etc., will we be able to do foreign currency exchange? Thanks. Uphold does. It's one of the reasons we partner with them. They have a fantastic exchange rate and interoperability. That's why Ripple partnered with them for ODL. They're able to send them the XRP. They swap it for whatever currency the counterparty bank wants. They send it to them. They have it for 7 days. They pay it back with interest. They swap it to buy more XRP, and they send it back to Ripple. That's how that's worked up to this point. They're basically lending that off their balance sheet to people that are willing to pay the interest on it. They've trialed it for actual, cross-border settlement for different currencies that, people don't want to hold. But a lot of people use Tether in that instance. Even Ripple used Tether before they launched RLUSD. And that's one of the reasons that they launched RLUSD. They knew that there was demand in the market for a stable coin instead of XRP in that capacity. And that'll shift over time, right? Once there's more liquidity in XRP and the DEX routes things through XRP, because it's faster and cheaper and has more liquidity than Tether does. Be a very different world that we live in. But until then, there's demand for ROUSD, and so they're able to clip the yield off of that. And then they have people that want to use it for different applications, banks included. But yeah, we partner with Uphold, and we can absolutely do the foreign exchange through the app there. The DAG app. If you want to download the DAG app, we would love to have you over there. It's app.digitalascensiongroup.com. Spelled just like what's behind me. Honest Aim, good to see you. He says, Mr. Legacy, hi to the Tea Lady. Beyond Brook Mastermind groups are buzzing, seeing all the efforts over the last several weeks, and all the response from everyone coming to rub shoulders with you and DWP. Thank you. It's been wild. We've been in the market for a while now, 3 years. We've been around, operating at a very high level of compliance, kind of setting the standard in the industry for wealth management and crypto. And so, there's a lot of fly-by-night stuff that comes and goes, and people show up at conferences. But when you're there year after year, and speaking on stages and shaking hands and developing deeper relationships with people, there's just some credibility that comes with being in the market for an extended period of time, even during a bear market like we're in now. Like I've said this before, but there's a lot of signal over noise right now. When the markets are frothy, everybody wants to get in. There's a new company, they're doing this, they're doing that. The people that are really here building real stuff are around in the bear market, and they're continuing to double down because they know that this is going to be very fruitful for them over the long term, and they've built something that can withstand the bear market. So all that being said, very proud to be in a position to be in the rooms and have conversations, and again, super blessed and grateful for those opportunities. And I appreciate the kind words from you and the group. If you want to learn more about the group, if you want to see what everybody's talking about in there, all that we have going on, you can go to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 in the group. On the other side of a $10 XRP, we're locking it down. Will be invite only and be a much higher price for anybody that's new coming in. Mr. Johnson, he says, you said I have not been around. BS. You have missed 8 of my super chats and the last 4 lives. You keep missing my super chat. Get glasses. I'm wearing contacts, dude. So I have bad eyes. I try to get to all the super chats, and I'm sorry if I missed them. If I did miss them, you need to send them in.
He's doing it on purpose.
Oh, he's doing it on purpose.
You're doing it on purpose.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not. I'm not doing it on purpose.
I'm just here to remind you about this.
Oh yeah, I'll pull that up in a second. Do I need to say super chat 1 of 3 so to look for 2? Don't do me like that, Rick. It would help. It would help me. However, I know the way that you're going to play this, and it's going to be like what we did for my high school prank, which is we let 3 pigs go in the high school, and we numbered them 1, 2, and 4, and they couldn't ever find 3 because there wasn't a 3. So as long as you're not trying to pull that on me, happy to go the other way with it. And again, appreciate the super chats. And if I really am missing them, don't hesitate to send them in. Either send them to my wife on one of the DM channels, or email them into the group at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and they will get them over to me, and I will read them on the next live. Capital Surge says, Jake, when Ripple releases escrow monthly and retail doesn't buy because most is done privately, who is buying that? Who's accumulating millions of XRP? Can you elaborate? God bless you and your family. It's mostly the ETFs and other large bodies, and people that plan to launch ETFs, because you have to have a certain number of XRP just to be able to, get to market with your ETF, because you can't just open day one and take money in and not have the backing there. You need at least some cushion, and that's why we saw the run up in late 24, early 25, before we did see the launch of the ETFs for XRP, was, those institutions were accumulating, and they're still accumulating. Banks and other counterparties are seeing the writing on the wall at this point, and I would expect that they would also be, buying some of that off the OTC desk and the dark pools. Now that the OCC has regulated that they can hold crypto on their balance sheet, you've also got the CFTC coming out, with 16 different currencies that are considered commodities at this point. XRP being one of those. So that's who I think it is. And you can speculate just like me. We got Burchard. They say, brother man, hope all is well. Blessed, dude. Thank you for the kind words. Bad connection with the last live. I know. That's why I'm back here at the house. I was like, look, I can't do another one from Bermuda. My team's here to take care of it. I trust them to do a good job. I'm going to get back to the house so I can run the live on good internet with you guys. He says, I do long hours building bridges. When am I retiring? God bless. We need the OCC's guidance on stablecoins. We need the reverse carry trade to unwind. Iran might, do something with the underwater sea cables there in the Strait of Hormuz. I think that that's how they escalate the conflict post the OCC giving us guidance to be able to push oil higher and force Japan to have to do something. Japan will raise interest rates. We'll be able to soak up those treasuries as we see a rotation. U.S. is going to lower interest rates, I think, in the next 30 days here, in correlation with Japan raising. And so that'll cause the rotation, which we need at this point to be able to stave off, the credit crisis and other stuff we have going on. Markets will fall. I think it'll be a V bottom. I think that there'll be a quick recovery, but that's only if they, figure out a liquidity provision and drive stuff into XRP, and that's through a BlackRock ETF and a couple other mechanisms, including Tether being destabilized and XRP being used by the exchanges to facilitate that when Tether is no longer an option. Could be sanctioning Tether. They've frozen some of those assets, but they don't know which wallets. There's a lot of other wallets that could belong to bad actors there on that network. And if they attack the underwater sea cables, I think one of the recourse mechanisms that the U.S. government could use would be to sanction Tether so that they can no longer move funds, because they know that they're doing it through that network now. So, Tether has been compliant with the U.S. government in enforcing the sanctions up to this point on known wallets. But in order to be able to, kind of shorten the war and make sure that this doesn't continue to last and allow them to operate outside the system, I think that they could impose sanctions on Tether if they were to attack the underwater sea cables and the reverse carry trades unwinding. And all that would lead again to, the use of XRP in those applications to drive the price and demand substantially higher. And then hopefully we get the BIS designation for XRP as a tier 1 asset. And then we're good. So just all those things. And I'm trying to give you guys an actual order and a play-by-play of what I think could happen. I've got a pretty good batting average at this point. So we'll see if that's the way that things unfold. But I think all of those things are going to be involved in what plays out here. Brad, Mr. Bryson, he says, hey, Jake, fast forward 5 years. DWP AUM is 1 trillion plus. Yeah, I think we'll be significantly higher than that. You're worth billions. Now, where are you also the company headed? What does a seat at the table look like now, and with whom? What are you aiming to accomplish? So actually, I sat down with a lady from Tiger 21 while I was in Bermuda and talked about this. Shout out to the gentleman that got me this tea, by the way. Here you go. It's Mr. Dapper. If you guys want to go check it out, pretty cool coffee and tea from Mr. Dapper. This is XRP Bliss, is what I'm sipping on. Kind of like a light, white chai tea. So yeah, 5 years from now, I think we'll be managing, if the partnerships and everything that we're working on go the way that I would like them to, 5 years is a long time span. I think that we will be managing somewhere north of 10 billion XRP within the next 5 years. And, you know, I also think XRP's price will be 50,000 plus at that point. So we're looking at, $50 trillion, if I'm doing the math right on that. At scale, that's very difficult. We got to have AI. We got to have tens of thousands of managers that are deploying capital in different sectors of the economy and being able to rebalance across those. Our team is aware of the vision of what that looks like, because at scale, that's difficult to be able to deploy that much capital. Now, with AI and all of these other economies and different financial products and derivatives and all the other things that we're creating, sure, there'll be other opportunities, but we'll really be looking for beta. Like, beta will be the alpha when you're managing that much capital and mitigating risk to the downside, making sure people are generating consistent returns. I think that that's what people are going to lean on us for. Yeah. Again, the money's not the goal for me. The goal is having enough network and precedent and resources to be in a position where I can go, make strategic investments in companies that are disrupting certain industries, and then sit on the board of those and have some oversight and just make sure that people aren't forgotten, make sure that people still have opportunities, make sure that things are being done in a just way, and not perverted or taking advantage of people. Again, you want to create value in society, but do it in a way that's mutually beneficial with the clients and everybody else that you're working with. So that's my goal. I think we're moving toward a technocracy. I've said that before. I've mainly mentioned it in the mastermind, but I'll mention it here publicly. I think Trump really could be one of the last couple presidents. You've got the trilogy that was written in the late 1800s, The Adventures of Baron Trump, and The Last President was the last book in that series. Is that, foreshadowing of what's to come? Maybe. But in a technocracy, if you guys want to go look that up in Wikipedia, it's, people that have extreme competence in certain fields that are basically put in to a position where they're able to consult for the government and help navigate certain situations. I don't agree with all of it, right? I'm trying, and again, I'm not like, I don't know that we're gonna have a choice on it. I'm just trying to position myself where I'm at the table and can help make sure that people's interests are upheld. That's my goal. So, it says XRP is skyrocketing. I don't see that on my screen here. It's at $1.43. Definitely not skyrocketing. But it will be in the not too distant future. So that's what I'm trying to get done. You have to have capital, resources, network, clout, wisdom. Like, I don't want to be in that position and not be able to have discernment and, have the good Lord on my side. So all those things, try to carry with me, and I pray for those things all the time. But, do the best I can, make sure that people actually have a voice, because in that system, people really don't have a voice. It's not a democracy like it sits today. Not that we really have a whole lot of voice anyway at this point. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. That was actually my favorite movie when I was like 5 years old. So my wife thinks Jim Carrey is stupid. She doesn't like slapstick comedy, but I do. I think it's great. Dumb and Dumber's awesome. Love those movies. So I like your name. They say I have an old 401 Roth retirement account with a little over 70K. Am I able to roll that over to you guys and purchase 50K XRP? I would need to work with you guys. Yeah, we could absolutely do that. We would love to work with you on it. So yeah, if you just want to go over to digitalwealthpartners.net, we haven't consolidated the websites yet, but we're working on it. So as it sits today, digitalwealthpartners.net, go to the contact us form. fill that out, and one of our team members will reach out to you. An advisor can walk you through what that looks like. Rick Johnson, here he is again. Do all the crypto gurus have it so well? I'm not going to comment on that. I'm in an active lawsuit with the counterparty that you just mentioned, so my legals told me to stay away from those questions. Craig, thank you for the super chat. Nicole, say legend. Thank you. Without the Clarity Act, but with the CFTC and the SEC classifying 16 cryptos, will the rest vanish? Are you also surprised that some of your favorites, XTC, Hash, and Flare, didn't make the cut, but meme coins like SHIB and Doge, etc., did? They really kind of looked at market cap. Adam Sandler. My wife loves Adam Sandler, but she doesn't like Ace Ventura, or not Ace Ventura, but Jim Carrey. I like Jim Carrey's motivational talks. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to him talk about going to Mulholland Drive and writing himself a check and manifesting the $10 million he made off of Dumb and Dumber. But like real deal, I like that side of him. You know, some of the slapstick comedy is stupid, but I find it funny. So, but anyway, Adam Sandler, also awesome. Yeah, so you know those three. I like underdogs, right? When sometimes things aren't listed, it doesn't mean that they're done for. SHIB and Doge, I think both. You know, I've said this before, and again, this is a weird paradigm. I haven't heard anybody else come to this conclusion. I think both of those will be stable coins, and I think they'll be backed by data or something that the community puts together that's around those to be able to stabilize them. And they'll be used as forms of payment. I think that Doge will be used, and SHIB may be used also in X money. If Elon figures out how to be able to stabilize the currency and maybe they back it with data off of X or something, you would have to be able to quantify the value of the data that you were holding. And I actually met a gentleman that had built a quantitative solution for the data that you're holding, to be able to create a value-based system to then back currencies with data. There's going to be all kinds of new forms of value that move on chain and is tokenized, and ways to quantify that value in the future. And that's the other thing I don't think people really understand. Like, they look at GDP today and they think that that's the end all be all. GDP is going to be uncapped on the other side of the implementation of these technologies. It's going to be wild to experience. So yeah, I don't want to say I'm disappointed to see those, but I understand why. They're all very low market cap in comparison to the ones that were listed. And if that's a qualifier that the CFTC uses in order to be able to determine whether something is a commodity or not, whether it can have derivatives or futures or not, if there's enough depth in the market that it could be used as a financial instrument and it needs to be regulated, I think all of those are constraints that they look through as a lens when they're parsing out which ones they should be listing and which ones they aren't. It'd be great to see like a framework that they put together on what qualifies as a commodity, and if it is based on, a certain liquidity provision or a total, market cap of crypto. I don't know exactly how they're determining that, but I think that it's a good start. Like, we have a good starting place, and I do think there'll be somewhere between 70 and 90 total cryptos at the end of the day that stick around, and the rest of them probably do go to zero. Nook. I don't know what kind of currency that is. Very cool. Appreciate you. They say, when are you going to crawl to the cross and say that you are wrong? I can bet you 5,000 XRP that the price is not going over $100 in 2025. Take the bet, me a man. If not, you cannot be so sure. I already bet scams that much money. I literally have a bet on it, and it's at a higher price than that. It's at 750. So I don't know what you want me to do. I've literally bet that much XRP for a higher price this year with somebody else out there publicly. So yeah, Miguel says, Jake, multiple times you have stated that on videos that the BIS came out and they said that they're designating 4 cryptos in Q2. Not been able to find that info. Can you point me in the right direction, please? I would just go search it on Twitter. That's where I found it. It did come from some credible sources, but there was an article a little while back, probably, I don't know, 45 days ago, that had that in it. But that would be most of the stuff that we talk about. If you just want to go search it on Twitter or use Grok, you'd be able to find it. Nick Knack, Paddywhack, gave a dog bone. They say, God bless you and your family. God bless you, dude. Thank you so much for the kind words and the support. He says, hypothetically, if I were to come into a big bonus from work, close to 5 million, would it be taxed as ordinary income? How can I avoid some of those taxes? Businesses to invest. The easiest way to be able to mitigate the taxes, if that's your largest concern on that lump sum payment, it would be income. If it's a bonus, you're not going to owe payroll taxes. Well, it depends on how they pay you. If it's a dividend out of the business and you're an equity partner, then they can, kind of absolve you of the payroll taxes. If it is paid to you directly as a bonus, you're probably going to still owe the 13.5% income or payroll taxes on that. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. It's a lot. I would try to get them to pay that out as a distribution or not through your payroll provider. And then I would work with the tax attorney to figure out, how to mitigate that. The few things that I could think of that would allow you to be able to offset that much income. Investing in a opportunity zone for a multifamily property. Let's call it like if you had the down payment, your 5 million is the down payment, you finance 75%, so it's a $20 million property that you buy that's in an opportunity zone. You could use the cost seg on that to be able to write off all of that $5 million in the first year, and then you'd be able to roll that after 5 years into another property, also tax-free. So if you held it that long, so you'd probably be looking at either secondary or primary market for that. You're going to want to look at a property that probably has, a high occupancy rate that you could make some improvements to and raise the rents on. So you're probably not going to put the full 5 million in. Maybe you put 4 million in, you finance, so it's a $16 million property. You keep the other $1 million for renovations, raise rents, work with somebody to manage the property for you, like an Asset Living or another large provider that's out there that has pretty good economics on that. And that would be a way that you could navigate, that much on taxes in the same year. You could also form a charitable foundation and make a donation to that. You can only donate up to 60% of your total net income per year in cash to philanthropic organizations that are public. Private foundation, you can only do 30% in cash. If it's an in-kind contribution, you can do 30% of your total income for the year in cash, 20% in kind. So, there's some qualifications and things around that. Again, I know enough to be dangerous on all this stuff. I would highly encourage you to go speak with a CPA or tax attorney, probably before you come into that money, so that you can consult with them and figure out if there's a way to be able to take that into an entity or some type of, you can't do a deferred sales trust, but there's probably some other solutions out there. You could put it in split dollar life insurance or life insurance for your company. If you have a company that holds your crypto and you're the key employee, you could write the policy on yourself in the company's name that the company could borrow against it. I don't know what your age is and how to underwrite that, but there's a way to be able to write at least a portion of that off if you structure it that way. You could do a charitable remainder trust and donate it to that and have structured income that's paid out from the annuities that it's invested in or the crypto inside of the charitable remainder trust. You probably want to have some philanthropic organization that you want to donate that money to when you're, after you've passed. Again, there's a lot of context here that I don't have. Your age, family, long-term goals, just so many different things that an estate planner or a tax attorney would ask you in order to help you navigate that in the best way. And you might use, multiple of those avenues. You could do, kind of a million across a couple different things in order to be able to navigate the taxes and also get exposure to different stuff. So that'd be my recommendation. If you want to reach out to us, we have people that are on our team that can help you through that. Just info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, and our team there will probably get you with Dan Plaskett here, who's our chief architect on the estate planning side. John Jags says XRP Ledger assets grew by 870% in the last 30 days. 900 million settled on one day, April 24th. That's over $3.5 billion settled. The XRP Ledger was number 2 globally on real world asset growth. Why no movement? Because there's not enough liquidity on chain. You need more stable coins aside from just ROUSD. Once you start having other stable coins and they settle through XRP, that's going to drive demand and volume through the network. RWAs being issued on chain doesn't do anything. You need liquidity in the token, and then you need that token being used to settle the back end of markets or the exchange between two counterparties on a regular basis to drive volume. And until that happens, you're going to continue to see it sit as a speculative asset, just like it is today. And I know, I say the same thing to family office clients, other RAs. I'll come up here and say to you, XRP is speculative. It is not today. Today it's speculative. Over the long term, it's going to be a tier 1 asset. It'll be risk-free. It's going to be used at scale across financial infrastructure. It'll be the backbone of the financial market, in my opinion. But as things sit today, it is still a speculative asset, and the market is definitely manipulated. So you got to be willing to put up with the short-term issues in order to be able to get the long-term outcome and benefit. And if that's frustrating, you're not alone. We're here with you. However, I think the juice will be worth the squeeze. And this is probably a good time for my disclaimer because I didn't say it earlier. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a CPA, an attorney, or a financial planner before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. The opinions I express this evening are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of its subsidiaries. Alder says, hey Jake, Carbon One member and now officially on board with DWP. Awesome. Brian has been phenomenal getting me set up. Thanks for all that you do. Awesome, dude. Glad to hear that. We have a lot of good advisors over there at Digital Wealth Partners. Really excited you got Brian to be able to work with him. We've got over 4,000 clients there at DWP, over 400 million XRP that we manage, pretty similar to the amount that Evernorth has on their balance sheet. These XRP are not on our balance sheet. They're our clients' XRP, but similar amount, which is interesting. Sorry, TikTok always gives me hell about an hour in. So glad to have you on board. Blessed and grateful to have you there in the group. If you want to join the group, if you're watching this, you want to check it out. It's month to month, no contract, cancel anytime. Go to beyondbroke.com. Use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar. Get you the first month for $2 to try it out. Miss Medea says, God bless you. Greetings from Canada. Oh, Canada. To you and the tea lady. Looking forward to seeing you in Toronto on May 30th. Your tea will be spiked with maple syrup. Thanks so much for all that you do for the mastermind. Excited to see you guys up there. What do I have on May 30th? There's so many things on my calendar. I'm going to take a look here. We're going to find out. I don't see anything on May 30th, but maybe I'm looking at the wrong calendar. So if there is something, I'm excited for it. I will be at Hampton's Tech Week. That's actually in early June. I was thinking that was the third week in June. Second week in June is Dallas. Oh, it's a Sky session that's up there. All right. Well, thank you for being part of the group. Thank you for the kind words. And hopefully I am up there in Toronto. Scott, Mr. Maddox. He says, Jake and the Tea Lady, thanks for all that you do. Takes thick skin with some of the crowd. Stay the course. You're providing information, insight, and information. Important insight and information, and helping many of us ride this wave. Thank you, man. People ask me all the time, they're like, why do you just, continue to answer the same questions over and over again? Or how do you put up with the trolls or all the stuff? This is what I signed up for. I knew that going into it. And I'm happy to do it if I can just help one person. Our goal is to help 1 million people become financially free. If I can have that level of impact over my lifetime, or even if it takes a couple generations, I don't know what's better than that. Like, if I could affect that many people's lives in a positive way and give them opportunities that they would have had otherwise, and help them be good stewards of that to make sure that it's not just lost. I feel a lot of fulfillment and feel very gratified if we're able to accomplish something like that. So that's the goal. That's what we're trying to do. And thank you for being here with us and riding the wave. And I think it's going to be fun when it rolls up on shore. We got about to be beyond broke. Last time, long time. Social, first time caller, long time listener. Social Mastermind LLC. After price appreciation, what time frame would DAG have for onboarding? Days, weeks. I have a small bag, debt settled, and would rather borrow against the total depending on the account setup. God bless. So you can borrow against it now. We have the ability to be able to set up accounts with people in the mastermind. So if you're part of the mastermind and you wanted to borrow it, you didn't necessarily need a manager. You can absolutely do that independent of Digital Wealth Partners. However, we're working to make sure that we can scale on the other side of price appreciation. We've done a lot of things to be able to navigate that already and put things in place to be able to meet demand that we see coming. So we've hired, a significant number of advisors. We've built streamlined systems to be able to create accounts within 24 hours. If you sign up and pay $1,000 and put your information in, spins your account up, you'll get designated an advisor within that period of time or within a couple of days. That may be the backup or the holdup, is just them reaching out in order to be able to set up initial consults to get to know you and your situation to help you navigate what's going on. But we will be automating a lot of that also. We just hired a head of AI, a new ops head of operations, Martha Vokes from Gemini, and she's rolling through and making sure that everything's on the up and up, helping to look streamline things and create SOPs and do all the fun stuff on the ops side. That's not my favorite. That's what my son says. It's not my favorite. But anyway, yeah, we could help you borrow against it without you getting it over there to DWP, if that is your intent. But it still shouldn't be an issue, even if you did want to onboard on the other side as well. We are about an hour in, so I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to go work my way back up. Again, if I miss your super chat, please don't hesitate to send it to us either through DM or via email, and we will make sure we answer it next Monday for you guys. This one is It's Me Duality. I said, Jake, do you truly believe XRP hits $1,000? Yes. I'm honestly doubting it will hit 10 to 20 at this point. I'm not hating. XRP is my biggest holding. So, again, I've been very blessed and I'm very grateful to have had conversations with certain counterparties and be privy to certain things. it's a foregone conclusion for me that it's 4, 5, 6, 7 digits over time. And you don't have to take my word for it. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a conclusion here for 2026 and why it needs to be that price in order to be able to function. We heard Monica Long talk about full-scale institutional adoption of XRP and the XRPL this year in 2026. So she didn't say 10% of Swift. She didn't say half scale or a little bit, or there wasn't any hedging on that. It's full scale adoption. So what does that mean? Full scale would be back end settlement of the entire stock market, back end settlement of commodities, back end settlement of the FX market, Ripple's use with Ripple Prime and using it as collateral on balance sheets for other institutions to be able to cross collateralize it, margin it, to be able to participate in other ways to generate returns off of it. It means other DeFi being launched on the XRPL for people to be able to participate in liquidity pools, digital identity being rolled out with credentials, permission domain, permission dexes. Like, I don't know how you are not the most bullish person on the planet and you have any doubt that it's going to get, to $1,000. But again, that's just my perspective. And I am unique in that perspective. There's a lot of people that have become very tentative, and they're walking on eggshells and they get hate about the high prices and they don't know how to combat it or, provide actual math or a scenario that actually leads to that outcome. And so they back down and they, back their predictions down. Even though they know deep down that it's going to go there, they want to stop saying it, or they want to point to me saying it because, it's easier to do it that way than actually come out and say it yourself and you have to defend it. So all that being said, I do believe it. I believe it to my core. I built our whole entire business around it. It's my only investment outside of a couple of $1,000 in hash. It is the one time. Look, you only have to get rich once. You should only have to get rich once. When you know something that the market doesn't and something is mispriced, that is an opportunity. And again, I can't give you financial advice. I can't, create your conviction for you. I wish I could impart upon everybody that's watching this the conversations that I've had over the past 4 years. And you wouldn't have any doubts either at that point. But unfortunately, I can't just, teleport that to you. And again, I'm not saying to take my word for it either. I am just one guy on the internet. Take it with a grain of salt, listen to other people, get different perspectives, and then you think critically and come to your own conclusions on stuff. You're going to need that critical thinking piece. You're going to need that on the other side of price appreciation. I can, give you my thoughts on stuff, but I am not the end all be all. This is one thing that I'm pretty confident on, but there's going to be a lot of things in the future that are going to be different dynamics. Things are going to shift. And you're going to need the skill to be able to think critically through things if you're going to be successful for an extended period of time in the market. I can't do it all for you, and I don't think anybody can. Even if you hire the right people, they're going to make some mistakes sometimes, and you're going to have to catch them on it. So, all that being said, this person says telepathically send it to me. If I could, I would. If you were a dolphin, we'd be able to get it. KT Baby, Truth of Hearts, good to see you. She says, Jake, welcome home. Do we have any speculation why Trump, Elon, Nvidia, etc. went to China? Rick Johnson, did you get tires yet? God bless. Very interesting to see that today. Elon and about 17 other large company CEOs, including Visa, MasterCard, and many others, Nvidia included, went with Trump on Air Force One over to China. So remember what I said earlier? That we're moving toward a technocracy? That's exactly what that is. That is that subset of people that are in those positions that have that expertise and domain knowledge that would all be sitting around a table going back and forth on things to help navigate whatever the global macroeconomic was or macroeconomics are, or whatever problems are occurring, how to navigate those and make sure that there's the most upside and the least amount of downside or collateral damage. That's what a technocracy is. It's those people, and that's why I want to be on these boards, because that's where I think the world's headed. So I think that is the first step, what you saw today, toward long term. It's just kind of, again, foreshadowing. Edac Slim says, Grok says you are the only source regarding the BIS, and it's speculative with no official sources. I think you should list your source or admit you lied. Let me find it here for you. BIS to regulate BTC, SOL, and XRP in Q2. Let's see here. They had it in 2A, and it was A2 and B2. There was a chart that showed it. Let's see here. Crypto regulations. I'm trying to find. Nope, that's on Newsbreak. Well, everybody's picked up what I said, haven't they? I'd have to look back at it. There was a chart that showed Reg 2A and 2B for a bunch of the assets, and it showed which quarters they were going to regulate certain things, and they had Bitcoin, ETH, Solana, and XRP all slotted for Q2 of this year. And it was a BIS document. Let's see here. BIS crypto regulation designation. I'll have to find it. I'll repost it. Prudent digital asset exposure, capital treatment, group 1, group 2. Here you go. Let me see if it's got this same little chart in here. This is a white paper that was put out by the BIS that states it. When's this dated? That's December 22. That's the wrong one. Well, I'm not going to continue to spend time on it. I will find it, and I will post it over there on Twitter for you, so that Grok can pick that up instead of just quoting me. Because it wasn't just me. I didn't get that to just pull it out of the air. There was a couple people that posted it, like I said, 45, 45 days ago was when that came out. It was at the end of Q1 when they put that through. Nurse NutriShops COs says, you look tired. Get some rest. Thanks, man. Appreciate you saying that. It's going to happen soon enough. Thanks for everything that you and your team does. Thank you. Appreciate you for the kind words and the super chat and the support. And I'm glad to be home for sure. Banana Recycling. Interesting name. So, hey, Jake, the one thing that's not making sense to me is why would all this unfold before midterms? See, I agree with that. However, again, this kind of goes back to the technocracy thing. When the technocracy movement had the most traction was during a it was during the Great Depression, during the 30s. It was Elon Musk's grandfather that was the head of that movement here in the US and Canada. So if you want to go look it up, a lot of people would be more apt to adopt something like that during a period like that after a blow off top. If they can get the crypto regulation through, and that's part of the transition over the next 2 years, is Trump, maybe he is the last president type thing. Again, a lot of speculation going on there. But there's, public perception matters more than pretty much everything else in order to be able to achieve certain goals, and timing, to your point, definitely matters. All right. And again, as long as they get through what they need to get through here and, before the midterms, and we have the governing bodies in place to be able to regulate digital assets, once they're implemented, it's not like you can undo it. It's in. And so at that point, it'll be too late for them to overturn anything. DFW Mike, my man, he says, Jake, hope your travels were fruitful for business. Thank you for everything that you're working towards for us. Sophia says hello to the tea lady. Stay safe. Appreciate it, dude. Yeah, we're working on lots of stuff for you guys. And again, appreciate the kind words, the support. And yeah, we had some really interesting conversations over the last 3 weeks. Bitcoin Vegas, XRP Vegas, Consensus, and then again this week at Bermuda. And I got one more week. Came home, for a few days, and then I'll be off to Baton Rouge on Tuesday next week, which will be good. Cotton Clarks, they say, Jake, thank you for all that you do in the Mastermind LLC, LT and Q on, I assume, question on LLC strategy building recommendations on agentic learning. Any programs you recommend? Onward. Oh, your mods are the best. Shout out to Gold Rocket and XRP in the Mastermind. Yeah, the mods are very good over there in the Mastermind. Shout out to those guys. I don't give them enough praise. I should thank them more. They do a fantastic job leaving legacy. Misfits, Lenners, Till Valhalla, all you guys, love y'all. Appreciate you for everything that you do over there in the group. Future also. So yeah, the agentic deal for learning, the best way to do that is just to get your hands on it and start doing it. I would get into Claude, I would get into OpenClaw, and I would just start building agents. And they don't even have to do anything fancy, right? Like I would just get in there and start building things that could answer your emails or certain types of repetitive tasks that you have on a regular basis that can be automated. Just get your hands dirty, start building some of that stuff. And then over time, you can get more and more complex with what you're asking it to do. You can vibe code. There's all kinds of stuff that you're capable of doing with these AI agents that was not possible just 1 year ago. So if you're planning on using that for your LLC, we are too. We're planning on building some agentic components to the DAO type infrastructure that we're going to build for family offices. And so, I don't know if you'll have Jarvis or what we're going to call it, but you'll have something. XRP for the Kingdom. Cool name. They say, can you explain the vault that's on the amendments? The vault that's on the amendments. So XLS64 is a pseudo account. So it basically locks your XRP and reflects it somewhere else in a different ecosystem, liquidity pool. That is exactly what we're doing right now with the infrastructure that we're trying to build or partner on. As it becomes available directly on chain, that'll make it much easier in order to be able to facilitate that. Then, the smart contract, so some of the concerns though, you need whitelisted wallets out of the vault. So if the XRP does move into the vault, as it sits today right now without pseudo accounts, the XRP has to physically move into the vault or the liquidity pool. And then, you want to build things in where the only place that can go back to is a whitelisted wallet, and there's insurance on the smart contract and a bunch of other things that we're all working on in order to be able to get the institutional assurances and oversight and, benefits that we provide as a financial advisor or steward alongside our clients being a fiduciary. So, that's how it will work. XLS 64, I think, needs to be implemented in order to be able to get the full benefit of 65 and 66. But, that's not even up for vote yet. I haven't even looked at those two amendments in a while. Let me pull that up. XRP scan, amendments. Where are we at? Single asset vault, which is liquidity pool, basically, XLS 65. And then 66 is a lending protocol. We don't have pseudo accounts even up for vote yet. That's XLS 64. I would prefer the pseudo accounts. That way your assets can sit in your wallet or institutional custody and get reflected into the single asset vault as that value being there. Kind of like a line of credit against it without, actually moving the assets themselves. And again, Ripple Prime kind of doing something similar with how their infrastructure works. Roughing It says, "Hey Jake, does your wife have some beliefs in our creators as you? I noticed she has a creepy skull face as her profile picture of the mastermind. Just curious, no disrespect, genuinely asking." Yeah, my wife believes in a higher power. I don't think she's quite as forward about it as I am. Her creepy skull face is the Crypt Keeper, and she is the tea lady, and she is into scary movies. And so that is why her picture is what it is. Definitely not, intended to be taken as devil worship or anything crazy. She's sarcastic and quippy and does a lot of, memes. She's very good at the memes. And so all that being said, that's why her profile picture is what it is over there in the group. She's into scary movies, and she's the tea lady, and she made that using AI. It was the first thing that she ever did in ChatGPT. So I was pretty proud of her because she was adamantly against the LLMs and using ChatGPT for a long time. And she's starting to come around on it. So I was just excited that she used it for something, and she's been doing it more here lately too. So. Textured Puma says, "Hey Jake, please have them fix the birthday part of the app. Scrolling through decades of months to get to the birthday is depressing and tedious." Deal. I will make sure that they are able to change the year on that piece. You don't think about that stuff till people use it. I'll say this too. My wife says you can click on the year. So that's what I would do is I would click the year and then go back that way. That way you don't have to scroll through multiple years or months. But our tech team's fantastic. I love them to death. They'll build something that works perfect if you just do it right when you're going through it. But I'll go through it and inevitably I mess up and I want to go back, or I fat finger something, or that's just me. And so I'm a really good litmus test if it does work, if there's issues. And so I always point things out to them. I'm like, there's no back button, guys, or because they're just one track mind. Like, we need to build it so it works this way and we're good. And they do a fantastic job of that. And then as long as you do exactly what you're supposed to in the order that you're supposed to, you get through it. But if you make any type of error or wrong direction, which I'm good at, and I help them fix that piece. So troubleshooting, that's what I'm good at. Let's see here. We've got Marty. They say, "Jake the Great, thank you for the kind words, man. God bless you and your family. God bless yours. Blessings to you. I think things are good, but they're going to get better. Do you think that the current Japan administration will balk to avoid reverse carry trade unwind? Will the U.S. Fed undercut it all by raising interest rates when they lower?" We have to lower interest rates now that we got Warsh confirmed today. So we didn't even go over that earlier, but the Senate finally did confirm Warsh moving in here, and he's crypto forward, and I believe that he will lower interest rates. We need lower interest rates here in the U.S. To make sure that our economy, is continuing to move along. that will cause inflation. With the oil where it's at, we've already got inflation. Trump, blamed the oil and the inflation on Iran, which is not wrong. But he also started the conflict. So I don't know if that's accurate or not. No, I think they're waiting on stablecoin regulation to be in place from the OCC, and then they will let it unwind. Hummingbird says, hi, Jake. I know you said XRP needs price appreciation where the stock market can be tokenized and settled. Why wouldn't they choose a different token? I read there are others that can. Thank you. God bless you. Welcome home. Thank you. Fair question. So probably talking about Canton or Ondo or Securitize. Or, there's a couple different blockchains or companies that have been tapped by these exchanges to tokenize the stocks. Yes. However, those tokens don't facilitate back-end settlement. They are for the governance of those networks, and they pay fees in order for you to be able to leverage the network, but they don't actually settle between the clearinghouses and the brokers. So settlement is different than the tokenization of these assets themselves. But it kind of works in tandem. It's almost like same thing for getting ISO 20022 in place. It's not a direct corollary for instant settlement, but it is a precursor. Like that has to be in place and it has to be standardized before you can move that direction. So when the president of NASDAQ last year at Swell was interviewed by Monica Long, I was sitting in the audience. I was about 20 feet from her. I got to listen to her talk about the first application where they're going to be using distributed ledger technology is going to be on the back end of the stock market between the clearinghouses and the brokers through the DTCC. Many people have misconstrued the DTCC investing in Canton with them like absolutely using Canton. And they may use Canton for tokenization of stocks, but the settlement component is going to be through Project Ion. Project Ion was finalized between the DTCC and R3 back in 2022, August of that year. It's the longest standing piece of anything that the DTCC has built or trialed for settlement of the back end of the stock market. The primary settlement mechanism for R3 is, you guessed it, XRP. So if there is enough liquidity in XRP and regulatory clarity, that's what they're going to use. People have said that they're going to use XDC. They could. Maybe it's Solana, right? R3 is also partnered with Solana at this point. Do you think that they're going to use a network that's ever gone down in the past? They don't have a tolerance for that, especially if this is going to run 24/7, 365. They need something that's been trialed for, I don't know, 13 or 14 years that's never been down, not one time. I can only think of one network that fits that bill. So why would they use something else? They wouldn't. This is the only option that's viable under the current circumstances and for the constraints that are required in order to be able to operate that at scale. So the only solution is they have to drive enough liquidity into that token to then sit in that position as the intermediary on the back end between the clearinghouses and the brokers to be able to settle those transactions real time. And they're going to use Project Ion, and its primary settlement mechanism is going to be XRP. And again, I'm just one person. There's lots of other smart people out there. That's my thesis on it. I could, try to argue it the other direction. I try to stay pretty well informed on all the different networks that are out there. Bullish on, I post about HBAR today and everybody's like, oh, you're pivoting. No, still just buy XRP, dollar cost average. That doesn't mean I'm not bullish on other networks. It doesn't mean I don't understand these other networks or I'm a maxi about XRP. I'm here for ROI. And on the other side of ROI for XRP, there will be other opportunities. And I will continue to come on here and talk about those and advocate for other networks, where I see the opportunities in the market. And again, I can't give you financial advice. You have to think critically for yourself, watch other people, have your own discernment, make your own financial decisions, and hopefully those work out well for you. Andy Blair, they say legend. What's up, dude? Carbon One Mastermind, can you walk us through the latest Clarity Act drama? Does it matter for us? What's the deal? Also, macro update, please. Hi to the tea lady. I've been through all of this already tonight. I will revisit it real quick. I'm 95% sure that we don't see the Clarity Act pass. Would love to be wrong on that, by the way. I was on Capitol Hill last year advocating for both the Genius Act and the Clarity Act when they were voted on originally. And I told you guys it would be 2026 before this was even, brought to Congress. Here we are. And now I'm telling you, I don't think it's going to pass this year because, again, I'm talking to very similar people as those that I talked to last year on Capitol Hill about what's actually going on. We'll see. I would love to see it passed. I'm advocating for it. I think it's good for the whole industry. However, I don't think it's going to happen. And it doesn't matter for XRP or the other 16 cryptos that have already been designated commodities by the CFTC. So, yeah, that's the drama that's going on there. Doesn't matter for us one way or the other. XRP is good to go. And on the macro side, I've touched on that multiple times, waiting on the OCC to regulate stablecoins, and then we'll see things unwind. I think that they're going to cut those underwater sea cables or do something to them to escalate the conflict, and that's what's going to cause the U.S. to sanction Tether. JJ says XRP to $100 by 2030. Is that the goal? Is that likely to happen? I think you need to add about 3 more zeros to that, JJ. I'm looking at $100,000 XRP by the end of 2030, 2032, somewhere in there. Textured Puma, already did that one, but I think they super chatted me again, so thank you for that. We already did Marty. We already did Hummingbird. Must have kicked me down in the chat here. Here's a couple more. WizFit, they say, if XRP has to be a much higher price to settle the back end of the stock market and having liquidity to tokenize assets, why do some people in the space predict XRP to possibly $10 by 2030? What's their disconnect here? They are pricing it based on speculation in the market and continuation of market cycles, not on real world utility or global macroeconomics or catalysts that I see in the market that would cause that number to be significantly higher. And that's the opportunity, right? Like, if you thought it was just going to $10, would you buy it instead of $1.30? Yeah, maybe. Probably buy Bitcoin, though. If you think it's going to $1 million, that's more upside than XRP at this point. And that's part of the narrative, right? So the opportunities in the market are when you see something that's mispriced and markets are forward looking. So, people that are buying things are anticipating a certain amount of return. If the return is going to be substantially more than that or way less than that, there's an arbitrage there and a way for you to make a spread or generate additional returns or alpha outside of what's readily available to everybody else. Kingdom Within Me, very cool name. They say, hey Jake, either A, XRP will go to $100 by September 1st of 2026, or XZX AIM or HBAR by September 1st. I don't know those other tokens, XZZ or AIM. HBAR, I don't think HBAR is going to hit $100 this year, but I'm very confident that XRP will be far more than $100 this year. Based on macro and certain events playing out, I have to predicate that stuff. My legal team gives me hell with timeframes. So again, certain catalysts do have to transpire for that to take place, but I'm confident that within that time frame, it's likely, significantly more likely than any other period in time that's happened at this point. Rachel Mitchell, they say, hey Jake, Carbon One from Australia, very cool. They say, did you see the announcement that Australian budget for this week? Bad news for trust and capital gains tax. We have to not set up trust yet. Concerned by Aussie government closing doors for wealth building. Thoughts? Get out of Australia. I wish I had a better answer for you than that. Unfortunately, it's kind of like California. It's kind of like, Canada. The government there is bad for business. They don't want people to have money. They want to take as much as they can from people. They're going to continue to put things in place that make it difficult to continue to compound your wealth over multiple generations. We have taxes here in the US, but there's a lot of structures in order to be able to mitigate that and structure it the right way so that you can pass it on to multiple generations and have continuity. Other jurisdictions make that very difficult. You have to get your stuff offshore if you want to live there. If it's under the monarchy, you're probably just going to have to visit, and stay somewhere else for whatever duration of time so that you're not taxed in that jurisdiction. At least that's the good thing about those jurisdictions is they are residency taxed and not citizenship taxed like the US is. So that'd be my suggestion is figure out where you want to go, work on getting residency there, and live there for whatever duration you need to, and visit Australia sparingly to be able to see your family and do other stuff so that you're not having to deal with, the tyrannical government and what they're trying to roll out on you. Victor, or here's the other option. Just make so much money that you don't care. That's the other option. And that's what a lot of people in California and New York do. They make so much money that they're like, I like living here. And that's the point of being wealthy is I can, live wherever I want to. Victor says, I know you said XRP doesn't need the Clarity Act by institutions, won't jump in and take all the liability based on one system and rails that has clarity. Too much risk for the big boys to take. They've literally said that they're going to. At Davos this year, Larry Fink said that it's all going to come back to one unified ledger. So yeah, that they're going to. And that, just like the email protocol. Like, is it too much risk to have the email protocol? No. It's a global protocol that everybody uses every single day. Billions and billions of emails get sent between people all the time over that protocol. It'll be the same way for transactions over the XRPL. Luke, XRP 589. Is this Mr. Judges? I don't know. He says, if I was liquidating 100,000 from Anchorage Custody Bank and wire it to my bank account at Chase, how would you structure it over time so they don't freeze it, hold the funds at Chase, and hold it hostage? It's coming from another bank, so why would they freeze it? And it's to a business account, because if you're working with us at Anchorage, then you have a business account. So have you had that account more than 3 months there at Chase? If so, you're probably fine. I don't expect that they will freeze that account. That money's coming from another bank. It's not coming from a crypto exchange. It's not coming from Kraken. Okay? Like, there's certain exchanges that Chase gets weird about. Anchorage isn't one of them. It's a federally chartered, OCC regulated institution. So I think you could send it over there and have no issues. In fact, I've done it. So you're not going to have a problem. Nevojack says, hi, dear Jake and the Tea Lady. God bless you. I love you. Thank you. Appreciate that. We appreciate all the support and the kind words. And hopefully you're getting value from this. As I said, I always forget to say this, but if you are getting value, please like, subscribe, share. It does help the algorithm. And we are trying to get to 200,000 subscribers over there on YouTube. So if you're watching this now or later and you are not subscribed on YouTube, please, please, please go do that. This person says, hey, Jake, with governance, crypto will be worth more. Which governance crypto will be worth more? Canton or Ondo? And what will their value be by the end of 2026? I have no idea. That's one that you could probably ask Grok or ChatGPT or one of these other LLMs, and they're going to give you as good an answer as I am. I view them both in the same camp. like you said, both governance tokens, both tokenizing, stocks. Ondo has a bunch more applications than Canton, and it's been around a little bit longer. So if I had to, take a swing, I would say Ondo over Canton. And I had no idea on price predictions. It's all dependent on, how many people adopt that and what they're using to tokenize on it, the volume over the network, and the fees that are being paid, and the scarcity of those assets. Yeah, there's a lot of different components to that would cause the price to wildly vary. I don't think significantly higher though. Like, I'll say this: I'll put a 10x cap on both of them for 2026. I don't think it's going to be more than that. Would love to be wrong for people, by the way. Mr. Clarity and Legend, bro, you give us more clarity than the Clarity Act itself. Appreciate you so much. Is it true that the governor of the BOJ has been appointed to the chair of the BIS? Ooh, that's a good question. BOJ, former BOJ working at the BIS. Current and former members of the BIS management. It's possible. I don't see it directly on here. Doesn't look like any Japanese names on the current roster. This person is interesting. So I'll share this with you guys. There you go. So if you want to go look up a background on somebody, I would encourage you to go look up this gentleman's background and who he's been working with over time. It's a very unique last name that he has. So go do some research, come back, let me know what you guys find on that one. All right. Papa, Mr. Shirt, he says, could you please talk a bit more about Doppler finance in general, Doppler points, and the vision and your vision for projects over the next 3, 5, 10 years? Thanks. Well, my phone's over here. I would show you lunch with Doppler at Swell last year, but I can't get to my phone. Got to sit down with them, got to talk through their strategy. Here's the deal. Everybody's doing the same thing we are. They are taking the XRP, they're drawing excess margin against it, they're holding it in some type of custody, reflecting it with a counterparty so that they mitigate counterparty risk. They're only using a portion of that margin to be able to trade things, so they mitigate volatility risk. Axelar's doing this, Doppler's doing this. We were the first people to do this with the hedge fund that we created. We just did it through a traditional securities offering here in the US. We didn't try to do it on chain. If we were on chain, we would be the largest DeFi protocol on the XRPL, close to $300 million in our hedge fund, all XRP. We just went through our first audit, no tax implications for anybody, literally like industry setting precedent for no tax implications participating in a fund directly with your crypto. So we can apply that to the tokenization of these funds and the products that we're creating. Full audit. The way that we've structured this that I would say is different than the other managers in the space is the clients participate in the good and the bad with us. We're not giving a guaranteed rate irrespective of the returns in the fund. And the reason being is, we don't ever want to, how do I say it? I don't want to go down that road because I think Doppler are good people. They have a VPN. Everybody that's doing DeFi has a VPN around the US and they've geofenced it. So you shouldn't be participating if you're onshore. They're literally compromising them and they can get in trouble for you participating. So we want to be the conduit for that. We want to work with great managers like themselves and other people that are doing innovative things on the XRPL to be able to generate returns and create an ecosystem of those players at Digital Wealth Partners so that you can participate legally here in the US with us. And again, that's not to like corner the market, but there's just a lot of qualifications here in the US that are very difficult to navigate, and compliance and many other fiduciary requirements that the SEC and the CFTC have on people that are managing money. And if you don't have the right things or personnel or compliance in place, you can end up in jail. And that's why Binance isn't here in the US. A lot of these foreign exchanges do a look through, and they don't want any US investors to be able to participate in their ecosystems because they're concerned that the SEC is going to become malicious again and come back after people after Gary Gensler and the whole thing that happened through regulation, through enforcement. So all that being said, we want to be that bridge. We want to be that conduit that allows people to participate across the board in these different opportunities. We'll continue to look for great partners and potential partners like Doppler Finance, like the one you mentioned. Craig, he says, Mr. Muscles. Not what he used to be, but I'm still holding him down. He says, been following a long time, now serving soldier in Scotland. I have a decent bag over 35,000 XRP. Soon to be more. Who is the best UK for institutional custody before price appreciates? We're it, my man. There's not anybody else that provides the same level of institutional custody and oversight that we do. However, I would say, one of the best custodians over there in the UK is going to be Archax. We know Graham and Simon and the guys over there very well. The only hesitation that we've ever had on working with them, because they have great infrastructure, they use Ripple custody, they use Fireblocks, they have a money market that's built on XDC, they have a bunch of cool stuff. They won't work with retail directly. You have to have a corporation or work with a manager, or have over a certain amount of assets in order to participate in their custody. And then two, they don't have crime insurance. After going to Bermuda this week, I'm hopeful that the underwriting and the cost is going to come down on digital asset insurance here in the next 6 months. And a lot of these other providers that have just held out on that because it's too expensive will start providing it. Archax is on our short list of custodians that we would love to partner with if they would just get that in place. Unfortunately for them and all these other custodians, it's really like 1 to 2% of whatever the policy is per year just to provide that insurance. So if you wanted to provide a $100 million policy on the accounts, you'd have to pay somewhere between $1 and $2 million a year for that policy. And how are you going to recoup that cost, right? Like, unless you have other financial products that you're building out that people participate in where you're clipping fees, you got to charge AUM fees, and it's pretty egregious. You're not even making any margin, right? Like, you're having to pay the insurance company 2%. You got to charge people 3 or 4% just to, make enough money to be able to do it. So, because of Anchorage's infrastructure and the way that their license is structured, their cost on the insurance is significantly lower. That also tells you, how secure their infrastructure is. If Lloyd's of London was willing to underwrite that risk at a much lower cost, then that tells you, something about the infrastructure that they have. So hopefully, at some point in the future, anybody that's using Ripple custody, Ripple will pass some insurance onto. I don't know if they're watching this, but that would help us out and would encourage us to go work with Archax over there. But all that being said, that would be who I'd look at, post price appreciation. If you are, an institution at that point and you have enough assets, happy to make introductions over there. But again, in the short term, I think, we're going to be your best solution after things go. John, Mr. Burnett, he says, everybody calling me Mr. Muscles, aka Legend. Thank you, dude. I don't have any amount of XRP. have the amount of XRP, X amount, hint Roman numeral, to join DAG until price gets over 100. But what can I do in the meantime except DCA? Is there a checklist somewhere? I wish I had like a bunch of cool stuff, outside of joining the mastermind and kind of getting educating yourself, surrounding yourself with the right professionals. You can do those things now. Setting up entities or spending money on legal or any of that stuff. If you don't have at least $50,000 to $80,000 in crypto, you probably don't need an LLC yet. Some people would even argue at that amount, you don't need an LLC, which my argument to that is I think the XRP is going to appreciate substantially in a very short period of time. And so that's why you'd want to be on the front end of that. If you think it's going to go to, 10, 20 bucks and then gradually go up over time, you probably wait on a bunch of stuff. I just think it's going to move much more rapidly than that when it appreciates. So all that being said, LLC would be your first stop. Probably want a revocable trust in correlation with that. Might look at a term insurance policy that's convertible to a whole life policy later. As your assets continue to appreciate, once you get over $1 million in net worth that's liquid, might start looking at an irrevocable trust, maybe an ILET. As your wealth continues to appreciate, you might look at PPLI. You probably want to look at offshore structures, annuities, other ways to be able to diversify your income and risk across, outside of just XRP and the exposure that you have there. So on the wealth management side, or how you're going to be able to generate cash flow to be able to supplement your lifestyle, philanthropic needs. We have a full life cycle, so it all starts with the governance and then the estate planning, and then it kind of goes to wealth management. And then depending on, where you're headed from there, you might do biz ops, buying businesses, doing other things in that with real estate and other, categories, or, jump straight to philanthropic and then do lifestyle management and then continue education for your family. And then it kind of circles the loop again and you go through all those things over and over again. So we have all of that for people, as they hit those amounts of net worth and they're working with us in our ecosystem, either in the mastermind or digital ascension group. We will help people navigate those complexities as they come up. I think I already did that one, and we're at about 2 hours here. So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to grab 2 more, and then we're going to wrap it up tonight. Again, if I missed your super chat, I apologize. Please send them in. We will read them on Monday next week. We got social. They say, what are the email domains affiliated to you? digitalascensiongroup.com, digitalfamilyoffice.io, digitalwealthpartners.com, exurelegacy.com, digitalwealthpartners.net. But all of it is about to just be one consolidated deal here in the near future, which I think you guys will be pretty excited about. I'm excited about it. We'll let you guys know when the rebrand's done. And it'll just be one very simple domain on the other side of that. Troy says, hey, Jake, JPY 10-year hit 2.6 while you're live. What's the breaking point? Breaking point is when it's more profitable to hold Japanese bonds than it is U.S. Treasuries. That is the breaking point. Right now, U.S. Treasuries are at 5. Japanese are at 2.6. When that inverts, that's when you're going to see the rotation and the reverse carry trade unwind at scale. Kingdom Within says, sorry, I meant XLM or HBAR get to $1 by September 1st. I think both of them could be $1 at that point. Yeah. Trading Review says, do you think the escrow in Ripple's hands, or they already have it handed out as a gift? I think they have pre-negotiated contracts and options on the different wallets. They have over 50 wallets that hold the escrow that'll be released over time. And I think different people will take control of different wallets. And those have already been pre-negotiated and again have options contracts on them. Native Texan says, thanks for everything. If you were in charge, of buying companies for Ripple, what are the next 2 and why? What would I buy if I were Ripple? I would. When I was at CoinAlts in 2023, Brad spoke very highly of Chainalysis. That or a digital identity company like Personal. Either one of those would be interesting. And again, you like it's just compliance stuff. Evernorth, like maybe I would buy a platform that could do tokenization of real world assets like tokenized securities or tokenized real estate. That's probably where I would go. Brent says, Jake, when your XRP is at Anchorage, can we see it in a wallet on the ledger, or is it just the account on the webpage? Both. You'd see it in both. You can go look it up on chain and see it over there. I think that's going to be it. Well, we got one more. We'll wrap it with this one. I say I have 2 IRAs worth 75K plus in crypto. Can I roll the IRAs over to you, buy XRP, and keep it safe in the LLC while dealing with my personal debt and collections? Jobless or wait? Those are already protected accounts. So yeah, you could roll those over and we could work with them and make sure that you, don't have an issue. We'd love to talk to you on that. Again, go to digitalwealthpartners.net, use the contact us form. So for anybody that's got, a significant amount of crypto and you want to work with us and get your assets into institutional custody, get access to the products that we're creating over there, be able to borrow against it, have an advisor, all the fun stuff. We'd love to work with you, digitalwealthpartners.net. We are hosting a webinar this Friday. So if you haven't seen that yet, we'd love to have you there. It is for high net worth individuals. So it's for anybody that has over 400,000 in crypto. If you have that amount of money and you want to learn the advanced estate planning, how to structure your stuff and make sure that your things are protected, we would love to see you there this Friday. The Luma is over there on my Twitter. You can go check it out. That's with Dan Plaskett, who works on the family office side. Again, chief architect of the estates that we put together for crypto for our clients. Him and I will be hosting that together and talking through all those points. Separate to that, if you need help, you want to download the app and get an LLC and start working on things and making some progress, you can go to app.digitalascensiongroup.com. That's app.digitalascensiongroup.com. And then you'll be able to, get the LLC set up, be able to get a bank account, all the fun stuff along with that. And last but not least, if you want to join the mastermind, we would love to have you in there. All you got to do is go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, #1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2. Again, shout out to Mr. Dapper. Cool tea. I'm not paid sponsor. He just sent me some cool tea, and I figure, shout him out on here. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, wonderful night. We'll see you on the next one.